MXM fans calling me like, where you at, Spency? What's up, my dudes? We got to come in here and talk about this 2022 Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Series RF Series for MXM bros. So, yeah, we're back here on a 2019 RF Pro Motocross track right here. This was pretty much their lowest of their low, I would say, over the past, 3 or 4 years, right? Ever since RF shut down and came back. Whatever you do this year in outdoors RF, stay the furthest away from this bullshit right here that you possibly can, right? This was back when they thought that less pre-made, almost no pre-made, with high erode was going to be like something really good for the motocross shit. I don't know where the hell they got that idea, but at this point we've all come to learn and understand that there is no replacement for pre-made ruts and roughness and all that kind of stuff, especially on the motocross tracks. It's not quite as important on the supercross tracks, but the especially like a pro Lucas Oil, pro motocross replica style of track, you gotta have the pre-made. You have to have it. Hell, even on the MX bikes tracks that are kind of like that, you know, some of the best MX bikes tracks, motocross style tracks, were all based off of a lot of pre-made. It's just necessity. It is literally necessity, okay? So you guys know how I talk about with a supercross track, like it's so important for a pro level supercross track in this game to have, you know, big enough whoops, skill gapped enough whoops, tall enough jump faces, you know, separating rhythm sections that you can hit and all that. And if it doesn't have those things, it's not really a pro level supercross track, right? Well, you flip all that around, and when you go to the outdoor motocross tracks, if it doesn't have big enough pre-made braking bumps and roughness and character and pre-made ruts going up the jump faces and big enough ruts in the corners and all that kind of stuff, if it doesn't have enough of that pre-made and it's not big enough and challenging enough, then it ain't really a pro-level motocross track, right? And I would say that's where a lot of their tracks over the past 3 or 4 years have fit into that. It's like a fucking amateur level pre-made on the motocross track, right? And the only way to experience anything else is to have like 40 riders on the gate, and you got to ride more than 10 laps on the track for the terrain deformation system to really do all that much to it, right? So, but some of you guys might be saying, well, Spencer, why don't you talk about the 2021 motocross tracks? Why don't you go back and ride on those, dude? Spencer's not racing anymore. He doesn't understand, bro, right? You idiots act like RF is consistent with anything that they do nowadays. Come on now. Come on now. Don't sit here and act like RF couldn't come out with this 2022 Supercross series and it not be like some random thing that's totally different than last year, because that's what they've been doing. There's no consistency to it. You boys know good and well it's a flip of the coin whether or not RF is going to have the proper amount of pre-made ruts and roughness when we get to the 2022 Pro Motocross Series in this game. Okay, so I don't, listen, I'm going back and talking about everything they've done since RF shut down and came back, because there's no telling what the fuck sort of idea they're going to have in their head that's going to be the best kind of thing to do all of a sudden, right? Hence, the first round, Anaheim won Supercross this year. It was literally an amateur sand track. Yeah, you know, the berms were super small on the Supercross tracks for a long time. The sandy friction-based traction, we don't need to go back into all that shit. My point being is, though, just because RF had a couple tracks with some more pre-made on them last year doesn't mean they're not going to come back out and make some bullshit like this right here again. That's why I'm making this video right now, is to try to prevent RF from making the same mistakes that they've made, okay? Because when you got that weird, not optimized Erode system in a game from 2007 that it was never even made for, it makes RF go through all these different things in their head like, oh, let's try to do less pre-made than we would normally do and crank up the Erode. Maybe that'll work, you know? Let's try to do, you know, let's try to make the berms really small in the corners and maybe it'll make the Erode feel better. I mean, you see what I'm saying? So there's just no telling what you're going to get. So, but what I'm saying is, if it doesn't have roughness that makes it feel like it's going to flip you over, if the braking bumps are not big enough to make it feel like it's going to flip you over, like it did back in 2017, you know, you got to have that pre-made roughness big enough because, number one, the Erode system doesn't really make braking bumps. It just doesn't. Yeah, it kind of makes little weird janky roughness in some areas, but not like 2017 style proper built pre-made braking bumps, okay? And that's a big thing I've noticed with a lot of the RF tracks over the past like 3 or 4 years. It's like when you first get on the track, the roughness might as well not even be there. Because it's not slowing you down. It's not going to flip your bike over. It literally might as well not even be there. Right? And that's a big problem when you're making a pro-level motocross track that is potentially going to be something that's going to be in the, you know, 450 Moto 2, 250 Moto 2 first laps, right? You see what I'm saying, bro? So that's a big aspect of it right there. Is just simply the fucking pre-made roughness. If you keep making it like this smaller, smoothed off, rolled off roughness, it's gonna feel like an amateur track, not like an actual pro level track in the game. So that is crucial for RF to have enough braking bump skill gap. That is the skill gap to a motocross track, period. It's the braking bumps and the ruts and the character of the pre-made. That's the equivalent of like big rhythms on a supercross track or big whoops on a supercross track, right? You know, if you don't have the ruts and the roughness and it's not big enough, it's not built big enough pre-made wise, then it ain't really a motocross track anymore. It's like a smoothed off backyard amateur track or some shit, right? So that's pretty massive for them, and them getting away from making every single pre-made rut in the corner the exact same way in every corner, that was a massive problem that they had with a lot of their tracks these past 3 or 4 years. It gets so homogenized because they'll build the ruts the exact same size in every corner, you know, the smaller, more rolled down, built around a road ruts, and then every corner feels the exact same because every rut's built the exact same in every corner, right? That's another really big problem they've had. Back in the 2017 days, when they would actually make the proper sized ruts and roughness, you didn't have that problem. You know, you'd go into one corner and it'd have a rut that would be built like this over here. Then you'd go into the next corner and it may have a totally different kind of pre-made rut in it, or different kind of pre-made roughness going into the rut that made every corner feel a little bit different and unique. That's something they have just totally lost sight of these past 3 or 4 years, right? And I remember riding on the WW Ranch not too long ago, like 2020, 2021 WW Ranch in this game, and they definitely still have the problem on a lot of their tracks like they have with some of their supercross tracks where they get too much friction on it, where it limits the acceleration of the bike. So then it gets to the point where you feel like you're just wide open everywhere. Everybody's wide open everywhere. And then there's no more speed skill gap anymore. That's another element they need to be very careful with in this 2022 Lucas Oil replica RF series. You know, that's a big part to motocross. The sense of speed itself creates a certain level of skill gap, right? You got to make it to where you can go fast enough on the track. You've got the friction low enough on the dirt to where you can get the bike going fast enough on the track to where it can get going fast enough to make it scary and like you can flip and fly off the track. If you make it too sandy, if you make it too friction and loamy, then it's almost like it just takes away that possibility of that even happening, because you're literally just wide open everywhere and you're not going to fly off the track anywhere and everybody's going the exact same speed because you've then limited the acceleration of the bike. All right? So that's a big thing right there. But like, some of you boys really need to sit down and realize how bizarre it is that MX Simulator really is the only dirt bike game out there that I know of that is trying to add a terrain deformation system into the game deep into the life cycle of the game, right? If you think back to Reflex, MX Bikes, MX vs. ATV All Out, those games had their terrain deformation systems from the beginning. It was always there. All the tracks were made around it. It's just the way you play the game. That is not at all how MX Sim is. Boy, it's been a while since I played some MX Sim. Sorry for a Spency boy kind of goofing off in this gameplay right here, but it's been a while, bro. It's been a while. I'm trying to get back into it, though, but you see what I'm saying, though, with the Erode system. Like, and listen, if it was good, if it was actually good, I would be praising it. I would be saying, hell yeah, let's go. But the problem is they're trying to implement a terrain deformation system 10 years, deep into the life cycle of the game. The game came out in 2007. 2007, okay? And they didn't even really have the terrain deformation system in there. Like, nobody was really running it. You couldn't run it in multiplayer until like 2018. So into 2017, 2018. So you realize MX Simulator is basically doing something that no other motocross game does. And I feel like that's what's making it feel so weird. And that's what's making it feel like you're splitting the community. You've got 90% of the custom track content in this game that was made before you ever even had a terrain deformation system into the game. There's so many things that goes into that, right? But it's like you're gonna have issues trying to implement a Erode terrain deformation system into a game from 2007. That's like trying to put a terrain deformation system into MX vs. ATV Untamed. Like, what are you doing? What it is you're holding on to this pipe dream fantasy, like, oh, well, let's just try this. Whoa, there's terrain deformation on MX Simulator. Oh, dude, it must be amazing, bro. Right? That's basically, in a nutshell, the syndrome that a lot of these guys have had ever since they've started doing the terrain deformation system. Oh, man, it's an Erode system. Oh, man, the track's actually changing over time on MX Sim. Finally, oh, my God, bro. It's got to be God tier, bro. It's got to be like Reflex. But oh, my God, dude, no. In fact, it's actually the shittiest terrain deformation system we've ever had in a dirt bike game ever, because it's not made for the game. It was never made for the game to actually play on it like they're trying to implement it into the game. You know what I mean? All these things need to be taken into account, right? But, and to some of you that might say, well, Spencer, you haven't raced in daddy years. You just don't know anymore, bro. Oh, really? That's funny, because I did go and watch a couple of those 450 Supercross RF main events from this year, 2022. I looked at the very end of the laps of the main events, and what did I see? One giant, singular, individual rut, deformed, eroded rut in every corner, thus aka the same exact bullshit that the Erode system has been this entire time. They have made micro optimization improvements to it, and that's about it. It still don't really make ruts in a straight line. It don't do nowhere near the amount of actual deformation in the right kind of ways like you can make with the pre-made ruts and roughness and character on the tracks, it still don't really do any of that. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. So, RF, what are you going to do? Are you going to learn your lesson after all this time and do, way more pre-made and super low erode? Because that's what you should be doing. You should basically be making a 20... If you just got this, you just got to have erode in this game. That seems to be what RF has been the past 3 or 4. They just got to do it. No matter how shitty it is, no matter how unoptimized it is, no matter how many fucked up qualifying sessions and canceled races and absolutely messed up main events they've had, especially back in the 2019, 2018 days. As you can see, it's fucking hilarious how bad this track was pre-made wise. But listen, if you're going to do anything, go in there and make a pro motocross track just like you would have back in 2017 and run literally the lowest possible erode setting that you possibly can on top of the full pre-made like you had back in 2017. And what that'll solve all of your single player issues. Everybody can go in there and have fun on the track on lap 1 or with 2 or 3 of their buddies. They don't feel like they got to go in there and have a full gate of 40 riders with the perfect erode setting to even make the track even remotely proper, right? You need to go in there, make it like a 2017 track, roughness, ruts, character, pre-made, the whole 9 yards. And then if you just gotta run a road, then just run the lowest possible erode setting. Fucking 0.1, dog. 0.1. That way, you'll have ruts there at the start of Moto 2. The single player will still be fun in the game. You won't have this bullshit rolled off, no ruts, smoothed off, basic amateur track bullshit. It'll solve all of that. You'll still have a little bit of the track changing over time, which all the little erode fanboys will, they'll get off to that. You'll have that aspect of it. That's just the best possible thing I think they could do at this point. Make it just like a 2017 and then add the lowest possible level of erode on top of that. If you do any higher than 0.1, then it's going to go right back into all that bullshit of it's deforming too much on the pre-made, so then you got to try to lower the amount of pre-made, but then you go right back into all the bullshit with not having enough pre-made on a motocross track. Then it don't really feel like a motocross track anymore, right? So, in my opinion, that's the best possible thing they could do at this point. Make it just like a 2017 with the lowest possible erode setting. It's going to please everybody. I genuinely believe that would please everybody. But I just don't think they've ever really done that before. I don't think they've ever really literally just ran 0.1 erode, right? Or 0.05 erode. Shit, I don't even know how low you can go. How low can you go, dude? Right? So in that way, you don't get as many of those janky, buggy, unoptimized bullshit issues with the terrain deformation system. We can never go back to this right here. This, 10% pre-made, 90% erode. We can never go back to this. And I think you've learned your lesson to a certain extent, but I just don't think you've went far enough. I don't think you've really went far enough, even with the 2021 outdoor tracks. You need more pre-made, more roughness, less erode. It's only going to make everything better. It's only going to make everything better. That's if you don't want to make the multiple different versions of tracks without erode. I just don't see RF putting in the time and effort to do that, so I'm just not even going to mention that. But that's the actual perfect scenario, is to have a Moto 1, a qualifying version that's kind of like this right here. Then you have like a Moto 1 version that's bigger ruts and roughness, and then a Moto 2 version that's even bigger ruts and roughness and kickers and character. And each one of those versions don't come out until 5 minutes before, qualifying, and then the Moto 1 version doesn't come out until 5 minutes before Moto 1 and then Moto 2 doesn't come out until 5 minutes before Moto 2. That's the actual perfect solution, but RF is not going to do that. So, otherwise, the only other thing they can do really is like 2017 style Permade with the lowest possible erode setting. That's genuinely what I think at this point would be the best thing for them to do. Straight up. So, either way, man. Appreciate you guys watching all the videos. I'll see you boys on that next one. Later, dudes.